Today, we're diving into what was, no joke, one of the biggest intellectual shakeups of the 20th century. It's a discovery that totally flipped the script on how we thought religion even began. We're talking about a story of a god who might have existed long before all the other gods. And it all starts with an idea that got turned completely upside down. So here's the big question. Did religion kick off with a whole bunch of gods, or did it start with just one? Now, for ages, everyone thought they knew the answer. It seemed so obvious. But what if? What if that whole story we've been telling ourselves is completely, 100% backward? This single question, you guys, it lit a fire under the study of religion and anthropology. And it's exactly what we're getting into right now. And this, right here, this is the whole debate in a nutshell. You've got the 19th century view on one side, this neat, clean little ladder where religion just climbs its way up from simple to complex. But then, bam! The 20th century comes along with this bombshell discovery, a primitive high god, not at the top of the ladder, but way down at the bottom. It didn't just mess with the order, it basically kicked the whole ladder over. All right, section 1, challenging old theories. And yeah, this is where that simple ladder starts to get really complicated. To get why this was such a huge deal, we've got to first look at the old idea, the one that everyone just accepted as fact. So for most of the 1800s, this was the standard story. It was called the evolutionist view, and it was super simple. The idea was that religion evolved, kind of like a species, You start with the lower forms, like animism, the belief that everything has a spirit, the rocks, the trees, the rivers. Then humanity graduates to polytheism, worshiping lots of gods. And only at the very top, the peak of civilization, do you get to the higher form, monotheism, one god. It sounds neat, right? Tidy. And let's be honest, it's a little bit self-congratulatory. But then, this guy, Andrew Lang, comes along. He started looking at the beliefs of these so-called primitive peoples, the ones who are supposed to be at the very bottom of that religious ladder. And what he found just didn't fit at all. He found stories, beliefs about a single supreme being, a creator god, right there among the people who weren't supposed to have that idea yet. It was a finding so huge that it didn't just challenge the theory, it threatened to completely destroy it. Okay, on to our next section, a global discovery. Because evidence of this ancient high god starts popping up absolutely everywhere. You could say Lang lit the fuse, but what happened next was a full-on explosion of research. It turned out this wasn't just a one-off thing. It was a worldwide pattern. I mean, seriously, look at this. We're talking about evidence showing up all over the map. Among ancient Indo-Europeans, among Amerindians, among the Pygmy peoples in Africa, which was a huge shock to scholars at the time, even among ancient Semites. Suddenly, this wasn't just some weird little exception. It was starting to look like a fundamental part of the human story. And finding this belief among people who were considered ethnologically oldest, we're talking about ancient hunter-gatherer cultures, that was the real kicker. It was a total game changer. I mean, think about it. If the people with the most ancient roots already had this idea of a high god, well, then it couldn't possibly be a late development. It had to be an ancient one. Maybe it was there from the very beginning. So we're moving on to new ways of thinking. Because this idea was so big, it couldn't stay locked up in just one academic department. Soon enough, more than just the ethnologists started taking notice. All of a sudden, this idea started crossing disciplines. You had psychologists like J.H. Luba taking a fresh look at the whole thing, and then you had a wave of ethnologists and historians, guys like Pruss, Swanson, and Radin, who kept digging in and finding more and more to back it up. It was official. This wasn't some fringe theory anymore. It was becoming a serious part of the conversation. Which brings us to our next big section, debating the high god. Because once you accept this thing exists, well, then you have to ask, if it's one god, what kind of god is it? The debate totally shifted from, did this god exist, to, okay, what was this god? So, discovering it was one thing. But man, trying to define it, that was a whole other can of worms. And the debate really started to focus on one key question. So many of these early supreme beings were tied to the heavens. So, was that it? Was this original high god just a sky god? And this is where a scholar named Raffaele Peccazzoni comes in. He put forward a major theory. He said, yep, the high god was there from the get-go, but it was, at its core, a sky god, a powerful being tied directly to the heavens. Simple as that. But Of course, it's never that simple in science, right? Another scholar, G. Foucault, came back with a different take. He argued that maybe this whole sky god thing wasn't the origin point. Maybe it was actually a mashup of even older ideas, like sun worship or star worship, that all got blended together later on. And you know what? This debate, this back and forth, this is exactly how science is supposed to work. It's not about just digging up facts. It's about the messy, passionate, and totally essential arguments over what those facts really mean for how we see our own past. All right, final section, the legacy of recognition. So, after all of that, where do we actually stand now? What did this whole intellectual brawl leave us with? Well, here's the present situation. That neat little evolutionary ladder, it's pretty much been thrown out. The idea that religion followed this simple path from animism up to monotheism, yeah, that's just not what the evidence shows. It's been largely discarded. What we're left with is a picture that's way more complicated and honestly a lot more interesting. The idea of an early, let's say, primitive belief in a single high god is now a central piece of the puzzle. It's not just the finish line for religion anymore. For many people, it might have been the starting line. This god before the gods has totally earned its place in the story of humanity. And that leaves us with one last big question, doesn't it? If history was wrong about something so fundamental for so long, what else don't we know about our earliest ancestors? This whole story is a perfect reminder that even our most rock-solid ideas can be shattered by new discoveries. It just makes you wonder, what else are we getting wrong right now? What's the next big thing that's going to turn our world upside down?